to our next story. The National Homeless Network held its 7th national conversation about homelessness last week. Attendees from various sectors gathered at the annual meeting to give people a chance to share promising practices from around the country and to chart a wider national course to address homelessness in South Africa. After 30 years of democracy, the fault lines in our society are still too visible to ignore. And that is one of the reasons the network has come up with the National Homeless People Manifesto. Well, Director at the Denis Hurley Centre and member of the National Homeless Network, Raymond Perrier, joins us now. Raymond, good to speak to you. Appreciate your time. Now, let's talk to the purpose and impact. What are the key objectives of the 7th national conversation about homelessness?
Well, the main purpose is exactly what you said, visibility. There is a great danger of ignoring the problem of homelessness, even though it's very visible in all of our cities. It's strangely the most visible problem. And I think that's partly because we all have this mindset. We're so used to seeing homeless guys at robots and people begging that we almost block them out. So it becomes an invisible social problem. But it's a very significant one because it reminds us of a whole host of social problems that lie behind it. Breakup of families, unemployment, problems of addiction, failures of the education system. All of these are things which have led to the high number of homeless people in our cities.
Raymond, you raised an important issue, and that's the issue of how many homeless people are regular individuals like you and I that may not have necessarily done anything wrong to find themselves homeless. And how do you deal with that stigma associated or the labelling associated with homeless people?
Absolutely. In fact, they're all regular individuals. They're all somebody's son, somebody's daughter, somebody's brother or sister. And the vast majority of them, 95%, are South African citizens and therefore should enjoy the same rights that all South Africans are promised under the Constitution. So a key issue is to break down that stigma. And I have to say, I am, having worked in the homeless sector, not just in South Africa, but also in the UK and in the US, I think regular South Africans are generally quite open towards homeless people, are generally quite positive, are keen to help homeless people transform their lives and get back into society. What I find, to be fair, is that it's politicians who are most likely to attack homeless people, to scapegoat them, and to introduce policies which actually go out of their way to harm homeless people.
Now, how do you envision the implementation of these manifesto points, and what are the expected outcomes, would you say?
Well, we're in the process of developing a national homeless manifesto. We did the same for the local elections a few years ago. Obviously, for the local elections, the manifesto is about what gets implemented specifically in individual cities. At a national level, we're looking at demands that we want to make on the national government and on provincial governments that would make a significant difference to the lives of homeless people. And we're preparing that, obviously, in consultation with homeless people. A key part of the National Homeless Network is that it's not just NGOs like the Denis Hurley Centre or faith-based organisations or academics, although they're part of it, but also people who are currently homeless who have lived experience of homelessness. One of the issues which keeps coming up is lack of access to identity documents. So, as I said, the vast majority of homeless people are South Africans. From our records, at least half do not have an ID. And the lack of an ID means lack of access to everything else. It means they can't vote. It means they can't access grants. It means they can't access a lot of jobs that are available. They can't open a bank account. They can't access training. And we have struggled in every single city around the country, struggled to work with the Department of Home Affairs to streamline the process of replacing IDs for homeless people. And unfortunately, they're just recalcitrant. They don't respond, with the exception of a few tiny pockets. They just treat it as a non-issue. But for every single one of those homeless guys without an ID, it is a major issue.
So let's talk about some of the other challenges that homeless individuals face, and what is it that they're pushing for. I mean, they want basically safe places where they can put up overnight. Obviously, even if it's out on the street somewhere, they want that protection. They're looking for ablution facilities and sanitary facilities. What else are they looking for?
Absolutely. So it's a good way of looking at it is in terms of three different aspects. How do we make life more tolerable, or less intolerable really, for people who are on the streets? And that's about providing safe places for people to sleep, access to ablutions. In our cities, there are no 24-hour toilets. So if you are living on the streets, you are forced effectively to break the bylaws by urinating in public if you need to urinate between 4 p.m. and 6 a.m. That's just absurd. Why are there no 24-hour toilets? Lack of access to ablutions. In Durban, eThekwini actually passed a bylaw to make it illegal for people to use the showers which are on the beachfront if they're homeless. So there are all kinds of things that we can do to make life less intolerable for people who are homeless. There are policies that can be put in place to make it easier for people to stop being homeless. So one of the big issues is access to casual employment, access to informal trading. That's the way a lot of homeless guys survive. And unfortunately, the laws seem to be prejudiced against people who are trying to trade informally, and except that's the way that people can make money and get out of homelessness. We have a project in Durban, for example, where homeless people are trained and set up as second-hand booksellers. And all of them have managed to turn their lives around and get off the streets, but they get harassed by the police, by local authorities for doing what's just a genuinely honest trade. And then the third aspect is preventing people becoming homeless in the first place. Most homeless guys in South Africa are young men who leave the countryside, leave smaller towns, move to the cities looking for work. They don't find work and they end up on the streets. So the lack of investment in our small towns, the lack of work in those small towns is constantly driving young men to the cities where inevitably a huge number of them become homeless.
Raymond, very, very quickly, is the attitude that you receive from the Home Affairs in relation to seeking some form of support for homeless people, particularly when it comes to renewal of IDs or those that are looking for IDs rather, an indication of a government's general attitude towards homeless people?
Absolutely. I've just been scanning the manifestos of the political parties. They're not all out yet, but the ones I've looked at, only one of them actually uses the word homeless. We're talking about manifestos which are 60 pages long, 260 pages long in the case of one of them, and only one manifesto out of the 8 I've looked at even uses the word homeless. It's treated as a non-issue, as if it will just go away. It's not going away. Sadly, it's got worse because of economic decline, because of COVID, because of all kinds of issues with the decline of our city centres. And if we don't do something, it's going to get worse. And that's bad for everyone, not just for homeless people, but for everyone in our cities.
Raymond Perrier, Director of the Denis Hurley Centre, talking to us about homelessness, certainly some of the endeavours that he and many other organisations are making in KZN.